those of you who I don't know, I'm Conrad. I'll be moderating tonight, but I think mostly everybody's been on at least one of these before, so everybody kind of knows the drill. Eric Zerowin, EZ, is going to be first up, presenting on the STOKE model today, and then followed by Phil Reynolds, who's going to do some sports psychology for us. So if you guys wouldn't mind just muting your mics just until EZ starts, after he does his little presentation little thing, and then take it away. So without further ado, over to you.
Cool. Thank you. Let me just get my Word document popped up again. All right, there we go. Cool. So, hey guys. There we go. All right. So my name is Eric Zerowin. My nickname or initials are there for easy. I've worked at Breck for 13 years. I am Rocky Mountain trainer, and I am Alpine level 1, and I'm also a dad of 2 little kids. And I tried for Rocky Mountain trainer twice and didn't make it a couple times, and got good feedback both times, and just decided to not give up. And I'm not sure, I don't know if Chris Rogers is on the call and maybe knows, but I think I might be the oldest guy to get Rocky Mountain trainer. I was 41 when we did it last year. But anyway, I love acronyms in our organization, and I came up with my own little acronym called the STOKE model. And STOKE stands for sharing, training, observation, knowledge, and evolve. And basically today I wanted to just kind of get a conversation going about relationship building in our snow sport world, not necessarily just in traditional ski school, because I know some of you guys do different things in snow sports. So it'd be interesting to hear some of that sort of like professional coaching world, and the examiners that do the endless winter that we were just talking to, that kind of stuff. Just get your input on how you deal with relationship building. But basically, yeah, that's kind of who I am. So essentially, I just wanted to throw it out there. Does anybody have sort of like one of those sage piece of wisdom that you would share with, like, and we're going to go through a couple different scenarios, but like that sage piece of wisdom that you share with new hires when you're doing new hire training? Like, what are some of those really, really important ones that you feel are super key to help them kind of conquer getting returns, making money, etc., surviving at this job that's hard to survive at? Saw Chandler gave a thumbs up.
Yeah, just raise hands, guys. But I'll jump in and just say, piece of advice I give to new hires sometimes is really try to enjoy yourself as much as possible. Because if you're having a good time and kind of giving off that vibe, people will want to come back to you and hang out with you more. So that's the piece I give.
Cool, thanks, Conrad. Chandler, do you have something?
Oh no, sorry. I was giving a thumbs up for like I was able to get on to the Zoom because I was having
in the meeting.
Problem.
Welcome.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Hey, Krista, if I could throw you under the bus, or you're already in the bus. Haha.
Yeah.
How do you? Because I know you.
Yeah.
Yeah, haha. I know you coach athletes, and you've even like coached some athletes that have gone on to like big things that, like, did you coach Senna Leith at any point when he was a kid, right?
I did, actually. I had him when he was 7, 8, and 9, and then I spent a little time with him when he was 12 again.
So can you remember if this awesome. Is a long? Yes, I know it's a long time ago. Can you remember back, like, when you first met Larry, and like how did you build a relationship with him and his family to stick with that for a long time?
Well, it's great. We still have a great relationship. I think it's really awesome. They've checked in on me to make sure that everything's going well, and knowing I'm a van lifer, that everything is like chill on my end. So someone like Larry is so easy to build a relationship with. He is like such a grounded and amazing individual himself, and he was on I think the freestyle world tour, so mogul
Yeah, the
skiing.
bump skier.
Yeah, so like there's definitely a history of like excellence in that family in and of itself. So, that kid had the right recipe and the right support and done in a really grounded way, which really helps. And what I felt like was my role for that child came actually from Michael Jordan, which we're talking about a lot right now. He's on the news quite a bit. He talked to Oprah one time about how he coached his kid, and he said, absolutely, I don't coach my children. I just have fun with them. I play with them, and if they love the game, they're any coach's dream. And I took that to heart, and I feel that as far as like how I treat my athletes and what I want to instill to them, it's that this is a game, this is fun, and just really enjoy all the aspects around it, so that they can be any coach's dream. They have that drive and that fire. As far as instructors are concerned, for training those guys, I like to tell them that it's an experiment and it's okay. Like something may not work, but then you just try something else and you find the right ingredients to make what you want.
Cool. Thank you. Hey, Chris Rogers, are you available?
Yeah.
There he is. Cool. Hey, you're back in a blue coat this season, right? And is that accurate? Like were you getting like traditional private assignments?
Yep.
Cool. So could you possibly share with us, like with your, because I for everybody there, I'm sort of in Chris's boat where I wore a red jacket for a really long time. Like I've actually been a supervisor more than I've been a frontline instructor. But I've gone back to instructing the last couple of years, and I really love private assignments. And Chris, could you share like what works for you to develop a relationship with a private lesson client, especially like a private lesson client that maybe when they first walk up, you're like, oh gosh, I can't believe these people paid money to come learn how to snowboard. They don't seem the type.
Yeah. I think really, and it doesn't matter if it's a private lesson or a group lesson or training, it all comes down to building a relationship based on what the guest wants, right? So, and if you look at the teaching and people skills fundamentals, looking at the top two lines there, establishing a relationship based on trust and two-way communication, that's really how I approach it. So the minute that guest walks up, I'm looking at them, I'm sizing them up, kind of looking at how they move, making some of those assessments, but it's really that first introduction and starting to talk to them and, listening to what it is they're looking for. But I think one of the things that I do and I try to train people to is that sense of experiential learning, not a ski school product, right? So I don't work off a set progression. I don't work off of a like checklist of things I'm going to do. I'm going to try to work with that guest to meet their goals, regardless of what those are. If that's getting up to the top of the mountain for a photo, then that takes more precedence over a specific progression. Or if that's, trying to actually learn, like really working with that guest to figure out what they want. And I think that really comes down to that relationship building and trying to create an experience around our culture, around what we do, and sharing a little bit of snowboarding, not just teaching them how to snowboard.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. If I'm just going to thank you guys who have shared so far. I'm going to give others opportunities to share as well. But the one sage piece of wisdom that I picked up on this season was pretty incredible. I had a skier in a CS prep clinic, and it was his first year teaching snow sports. He got certified in New Zealand through some sort of like a rookie academy years ago, but never actually used it. And I think he may have taught one season at Vail like 30 years ago, but didn't have a whole lot of experience, but he's sort of like one of those retired guys back at it. And he talked about the platinum rule, which I really loved, treating others the way they want to be treated, as opposed to that whole golden rule of how you want to be treated. I think it's just so great to share that with instructors, that they just need to work with people and give them what they want. Because I love, like what Chris just said, getting somebody to the top of the chairlift to take a picture. You know, they don't really care. They don't want to use their toe edge, but they really want to get that picture for Instagram. They took a trip to Vail and they met Chris Rogers. So getting them up there, get that picture, you know, that sometimes can make someone want to come back and learn their toe edge instead of pushing that progression, like Chris was saying as well. So in the Stoke training model, the next one is training. And it's kind of a hard one. I was thinking on like, how am I going to present this tonight? But really just, I wanted to talk to you guys about what resources do any of you guys have? I had just a couple I wanted to talk about of resources that you guys have used sort of like outside the realm of snow sports, books, YouTube videos, etc., that you may have used that have been very relevant to the aspect of relationship building. Chris Hargrave, you got anything?
So books and resources outside of snow sports. You know, I just actually joined an organization here recently because I've been coaching baseball for several years, and I joined the Positive Coaches Alliance and Friends of Baseball, and got certified through their organization. And they actually have some pretty incredible tools. I mean, this is just one example, but they have something called Double Goal Coach, which is a whole manual of theirs, which is really, really interesting stuff if you're interested in learning how, you know, maybe mainstream sports work with children in that environment. So there's one. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah. Yep. So I have one that I don't know if you guys want to just jot it down on a piece of scrap paper. I know the meeting's being recorded, but there's a book. I don't know if Chris, because you're a dad, right? I know I've met you a couple times. There's a book called Love and Logic. You ever read that or familiar with that?
I haven't. No.
So for those of you that may have not been turned on to that book, Love and Logic would be a really awesome book for people to read, just to get a really fun sort of parental understanding of how to deal with kids. It's really funny when you teach students versus just like, for me, interacting with my own kids. Just sort of that expectation of like, this is my child. I want my kid to act this certain way. But when you're teaching a kid snow sports and they're being goofy and being maybe a pain in the butt and not paying attention to you, and they're more interested in throwing snowballs, and you're just like, what the heck? We'll go throw snowballs. But then when you're out there with your own kid and you're like, God, we're out here, it's my day off. I want them to ride. And you might treat them a little bit differently. But sort of that Love and Logic book is really a great one for those of you that may not be parents and you may not be reading parenting books, but that's a really, really awesome one. And then another one that I wanted to share, which I got years ago, and I had to look it up because I haven't read it in a really long time, but it is called Who Moved the Cheese? The author's name is Spencer Johnson. He is also the co-author of a book that this was an old bike shop owner had referred me to. The book was called The 1 Minute Manager. It's a really good book on like dealing with talking to people and making very quick decisions. And then that second book is called Who Moved the Cheese, and he's the co-author. So those are a couple awesome, really good books on just sort of that very quick relationship building. I came from that retail world where you have to essentially build that relationship in a matter of 5 seconds to get that person to buy something, because that first impression walking in the store, maybe they're just there to buy an inner tube, but maybe they're going to walk out with a multi-$1,000 bicycle. So that first impression, just like with snow sports, is super important. So that is a really good one. For the Stoke model as well, for you guys that are out there, that's observation. And the one that I talked about on Snow Clinic was, even when we're out there teaching a private lesson, a lot of us are trainers and we're out there kind of sharing space with instructors that might be brand new and trying to figure out if they're doing it right. And you can just observe them while you're on snow, give them feedback back in the locker room, is a really nice one. But does anybody have one that they could share for relationship building that you may have even just this season observed, like while you're standing at lineup waiting for your guests? Corey Hello. I know you're muted. You can wait there.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm sorry I missed the beginning of this. I really wanted
That's
to
okay.
come and I couldn't make it and I have to leave early, but now I have something to add, so I'm glad I
That's
joined.
okay. I know
Um,
you were part of this clinic last year, and I know that
Yeah.
you switched roles at work this year.
I did.
To supervising, so kind of
Mhm.
that other direction that I used to work. So what did you observe this year at Lineup, like some really good stuff on relationship building, or even if you might have from that supervisor role of having to kind of, improve your instructor's behavior, maybe even something that you may have observed that maybe you coached somebody on this year.
Well, I wanted to add to something that I can answer your question, but I wanted to add on to something that I have read outside of the snow sports world that I have
Please.
brought into the snow sports world. And I think I talked to Dana about this and probably Conrad. It's called the 5 love languages. Dana's
Yeah,
like, yes, I see
I
Dana.
know that one.
Yeah. So if you haven't read it, and I'm on my phone, so I can only see like 4 people at a time. The 5 love languages are basically ways that people show love and the way people receive love. Oh, nice, Conrad. And so the 5 are gifts, so receiving gifts or giving gifts, words of affirmation, so good job, way to go, I'm proud of you. Acts of service, which would be like, grabbing somebody's snowboard for them or grabbing them a glass of water or whatever it is. Quality time, which is, hanging out on snow with them. Maybe it's going tubing instead of actually snowboarding. And then last is physical touch, which is not weird. Physical touch isn't like high fives and hugs and, obviously not crossing the line or anything. But it's something. I read this book for somebody recommended it to me. I wasn't like in a bad relationship or anything, but then it's something I started incorporating into all of my coaching jobs. Recognizing when a student or a kid or an adult was just like getting down on themselves and then trying to figure out which love language they were. I tend to do a lot of words of affirmation and like high fives, which some people don't like to be touched. Some people don't want a high five. They don't want a pat on the back. Some people would much rather you, I would consider an act of service almost giving them like a lot of feedback. Or, like the words of affirmation is saying like, hey, you're doing a great job. And like, I personally don't like hearing that. I don't like words of affirmation. I'm like, don't blow smoke up my ass. Like, I want to get better. Don't tell me how good I'm doing, So that's something that I started incorporating into not only teaching, but also supervising. I noticed I had some instructors who love to leave things on my desk. They leave me chocolate, they leave me tea, they leave me bottles of wine. And I'm like, okay, this person is a gift giver. This person clearly wants to like give me things and show me that they care about what I'm doing or they think I'm doing a good job. So they're just like, I got you chocolate and I thought of you. Or they just like left me a note on my desk. And I'm like, wow, that's like really nice. So as soon as I recognize that, I'm like, I'm going to go leave a note on their locker, something like that. And that's kind of how I've brought it into supervising, is trying to think of everyone as an individual and not just like a mass email type thing. I try to get a little more personal with it.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Corey. Tyson. Hey there.
What's up?
Hey, I don't know you. Would you mind introducing yourself? And the next part of the STOKE model is K, is knowledge. And basically, could you share, maybe just going back again, just share maybe something that you do in your world, because I don't even know if you're a coach or just a regular instructor or supervisor, etc. So what do you do, like that sage piece of wisdom that you might want to share with us in you know, the realm of relationship building? Drop some knowledge.
I will try. So I'm Tyson. I am probably the lowest certified instructor here. I am only level 2. I'm a trainer at Arapahoe Basin, and stop me if you've heard this, but at smaller mountains, getting higher certified instructors is kind of hard. So I'm trying to build myself up on the cert path just so that my mountain has that. But yeah. Probably kind of the biggest knowledge that I like to impart on people, especially on the mountain, is that, you know, we have an awesome job. And who in the world gets to come out, play outside 5 days a week and get paid for it? But at the same time, it is a job, and you're going to have a bad day. You're going to have that day where you have a ridiculous split. And management's not going to be able to help you, and you're just going to be stuck with that. And the only people you have to lean on are the other instructors out there in the same area as you. And try to build those relationships with those instructors so that when you are ready to throw in the towel, give up, walk out, you can walk up to that person and say, hey, help me, for the love of God, please, what do I do?
Nice, thank you. Keep at it, man. I love the Basin. I'm kind of bummed with the whole, you know, not getting to ride there anymore. But yeah, it's a sweet place to work.
I like it.
Yeah. I just saw Damien walked away, but I'm sorry, what was your name again?
My name's Jamie.
Jamie, did we meet at Rider Rally? Were you at Rider Rally at the Basin a couple years ago?
No, we went to Rider Rally last year at Big Sky.
Okay, then I guess we didn't meet. Hey, but you guys are examiners, and you sort of do the endless winter gig, which I've never done. I've been doing the endless ski resort gig. I work at the ski resort in the summertime, but I work at Breck. I don't leave Summit County. Can you just drop a little knowledge on sort of that whole endless winter, and how you sort of manage those relationships on, you know, not getting to see those people you work with for half a year? And you know, I guess how do you keep in touch and keep relationships going?
We keep relationships going using Messenger, using the internet. So this Zoom is actually getting used to this format will be really nice going forward. Then we can bring in more people easier. But yeah, mostly the internet is how we stay in touch. And honestly, these Facebook groups have been such a good way to stay in touch with the people we work with. And if people have questions, they can easily contact us, even though we're halfway across the world. And so that's been a big part of how we've been able to keep our relationships going.
I don't know, like for myself, I don't know if I was in one place, if I would have used Facebook as much as I ended up doing. But with going back and forth and having your peer group and your friends and everything all over the world, it just became a natural kind of catch-all to use it. And yeah, so you know, when you're as transient and have a home base half the year, it is good to have sort of one hub where you can go back to.
And are you saying that Facebook is that?
For some of our stuff, like we were on a call with Cadrona today, and you know, Cadrona's doing a pretty good job of using, you know, different medias, and we use Workplace, so you know, for there, so kind of modified Facebook, but a lot of our stuff is going through Facebook as well. You know, with New Zealand at any one time, we've got courses running in China, Japan. So, you know, being able to communicate over one platform, it kind of works as that platform. So I have a tendency to use it more than I probably would have for my personal use if I hadn't seen it be effective.
Yeah, it's neat with like, I had never used Zoom until the first tech talk that Lynn set up. I think that was the first time I've used Zoom. But in this last month, I've been using it almost every day just for my kids have been doing their morning meeting at daycare on Zoom. And it's just like such a ridiculous avenue for like these little kids to try to be in front of a screen, to try to interact with each other. But yeah, like I'm sure Brennan Metzler and I probably have like close to like 200 mutual friends just with our years working at Breckenridge, like on Facebook, like everybody in ski school. That's just like such a good resource that people use. But you know, just also moving on with like that relationship building with different clientele, all these different avenues that we have to use, you know, with like WhatsApp for people with foreign phone numbers, or you know, Zoom. I really like that Chris threw out that survey recently, and we were talking about it a couple meetings ago about using Zoom meetings in the future for like our after work clinics, like our after work MA clinics. Very often, like participation is difficult with those. People are like, oh, I got to run home, I got to walk my dog, you know, whatever, or they want to go eat dinner, they're tired, they want to take their shoes off, they want to go home, but then they can still participate in a clinic. I mean, the Zoom meeting idea, Lynn, I love that you set this up, and you know, congratulations on getting this rolling. Super sweet. So yeah, the last part of the STOKE training model is evolve. And you know, basically the one with that is that, you know, we never want to stop progressing. We never want to stop doing what we're doing. So a couple things had come to mind, and I'm glad to see Brennan jumped on the call there. Hey, Brennan, as far as evolving, like this, you know, this current situation we're inside of, with sort of like the whole backcountry thing, how do you, you know, how are you evolving? Like, I know you and I have talked that you're, you know, getting comfortable like snowboarding, wearing a harness and using ropes and things like that, and doing some more extreme stuff. Like, how do you evolve when it comes to sort of those things that like, it's sort of like, okay, shit, I guess I'm going to jump out of the airplane now. You know, how do you evolve when it comes to those things that are, you know, big and bold?
Wow, I appreciate you giving me that credit, which you know, we don't post our boring descents on Instagram, so post
right.
jumping out of airplanes. But what's interesting, the thing that jumps out to me about evolution is I haven't left the county since March 16th, and I've been snowboarding the backcountry in the same county for 13 years. And it took being quarantined here to do a couple lines that are really easy to get to that I just never had done, either because they're always crowded or just whatever, just for any reason. So the evolution for me has been more enjoying where you are and kind of finding the opportunity within the circumstance, because our backyards are all pretty cool, independent of exactly where your backyard is. And sometimes it's easy to always look beyond it for the next thing. So my evolution has been more just utilizing the terrain that's around. I've had a lot of fun on Swan Mountain, this boring Missouri looking hill that I live on now, because we built jumps and log rails and just cool things like that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what we've been doing.
Yeah. And then let's just see some Phil. I'll let you. There you go.
Hi.
Hey there. Hey. So yeah, if you could do two things, if you could maybe give us a quick intro, because I've never met you, and then maybe even throw out something. Did you evolve at all this winter in the realm of relationship building? And is there anything that maybe you learned this winter that maybe helped you with that aspect of your snow sports?
Sure. So Phil Reynolds, I am from the Vail Ski and Snowboard School. I was an instructor for about 7 years and a supervisor there as well, like yourself. And I am going to present after this, and I'm going to get into that quite a bit, some of my own journey. And I guess I'll leave some of that for my presentation.
Cool. Sounds good. I can't see I don't know your full name. Is it Adria?
Yeah, it's Adria. I actually go by 80 though.
80, how are you?
Good, how are you? Sorry, I jumped in late. I fell asleep.
Oh, no worries. Good excuse. I like to take naps too.
Yeah.
Yes, naps are great. Hey, just so since you did join late, but here at the end of this model, the evolve, just in the realm of relationship building, was there anything that you sort of learned this winter that helped you with relationship building in our business?
You know, one thing that comes to my mind that we're really working on with the team that I coach with is just keeping that contact, that yearly contact with the athletes, and I think we're trying to apply that to AASI as well. As, you know, it's not just a yearly thing. It's that, it's not just a seasonal thing. It should be a yearly thing as well, and that helps build relationships as well. And that's what really pops in my mind when you ask that question.
Awesome. Cool. So yeah, guys, thank you for letting me share. Just to wrap it up again, if you just to the points of that STOKE training model, it's just a really fun one. Just to kind of, we talked about at the exam last year that there isn't really a training manual for trainers. You know, all like the technical manuals and so forth, like they help instructors get through that sort of certification path. And you know, I shared this STOKE training model, and I know Chris and Tony dug it, and I know Lynn liked it, and so forth. So just for those of you that didn't go through the clinic on snow, and just to wrap it up again for this Zoom meeting. But yeah, it's basically sharing. You know, sharing's a big one. Just sharing that passion for the sport and all those ins and outs of how we do our job for those of us that are trainers. Training, just, you know, keep going yourself. Reading books outside of our industry is really helpful. Observations, just always seeing what's out there. I know now with all YouTube and so forth are so cool to learn new tricks and, you know, a new recipe, cook yourself a different recipe for your brownies, Lynn. Knowledge, thank you guys for sharing your little sage pieces of wisdom, and then, you know, just keep evolving, keep trying new things. So yeah, thanks guys for letting me share tonight.
All right, thanks very much, Easy. Has anybody got anything to add on this? Anybody want to freestyle on the STOKE model a little bit? No. Okay, that's just fine. But thanks very much, Easy. We will move swiftly on to Phil, who's going to do a little presentation on sports psychology. So yeah, Phil, take it away for us.
What's going on, guys? Can everyone hear me okay? Sweet. And I'm going to share my desktop here. And all right. Can everyone see my presentation slides? Yes, no, yeah, cool. So as EZ was saying, there really isn't a training manual for coaching as well. And I'm going to be talking about some sports psychology stuff and through the lens of my own journey as a coach, as an instructor, as a person. And we're going to kind of get into a couple of things as it relates to that. Some time ago, someone gave me a book called Mind Gym, which was probably my first experience with sports psychology. It's a great book, by the way. So what is sports psychology? It really has to do with mental preparation. It could be for performance. It could be for snowboarding. That's what I use it for, but it could be for any aspect of your life. And some of the things we're going to cover, you know, why does anyone need to apply sports psychology, and how do you mentally prepare for anything? So we all deal with fear. Fear is in every stage of, especially snow sports instruction. Your beginners are certainly very fearful. But I would say that, you know, whether you're an instructor or a coach or a trainer, you know what fear is, and you probably know what it looks like. And, why are we fearful? What is it about human nature that makes us fearful? We're just sliding around on snow and we're snowboarding. What is it about that makes us fear? Is it, mortality? Do we think we're going to die? Do we, are we just afraid? And we can look to science to why that might be. If you get down to the atomic level, some weird things happen when there's an observer, especially. And if you ever have a chance, look up the dual slit paradox. It's interesting. But there is also a lot of science. And in my own journey, I did some research, and I found some things here you could see focused on swimmers and speed skating athletes, where they did about a 45-minute before their practice session where they just did general goal setting and visualization. And I should also say, I think a lot of you are all familiar with mindfulness. I saw in some of the other sessions, you started off with a meditation, and that's really where this is going with this discussion. So in a 7-week trial, they were able to produce very good results, overall success, and measurable using, the standards of scientific method. And, what is a clinical study? It basically, this was related to behavioral research and human behavior. So people, they're getting success. Some of the biggest and most elite athletes in the world have these practices, this, mindful preparation, mental preparation. You guys might recognize Phil Jackson, one of the most winning coaches in professional sports. He didn't only do it with, Michael Jordan. I think Krista was talking about Michael Jordan earlier. He also did it with Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal. And he was able to reproduce that excellence in multiple different places. And, his credentials are very impressive, to say the least. To do it just one time is impressive. To do it 11 times as a coach and twice as a player is something, there's something to it. And one of his basic tenets is this mindfulness. And here, I hope everyone can see this, but here he is telling Oprah about that.
We talked about mindfulness as being, as much as we pump iron and we run to build our strength up, we need to build our mental strength up. We need to build our mental strength so we can focus, get one-pointed attention, and so that we can be in concert with one another in times of need. When you come off the court, you had a bad call, things going wrong for you, you sit on the bench, you take a breath, and you reset yourself. You reset yourself. And you do that through this mindfulness. You just come right back in and collect yourself. So we practiced mindfulness is what you have to do.
So you would literally have the guy sit in stillness.
That's right.
Meditating.
That's right. Taught them how to hold their hands, where their shoulders had to be, the whole process of, being in upright situations so that you're not slouched and you're not going to fall asleep. And they bought into it.
Would you do this before every game? You would do this regularly? You would do this?
We introduced it, and we introduced it in training camp. And then day of games, we started using it. And it ultimately became a process where...
It's like centering yourself.
That's right. Yeah. Just getting back and being centered.
So this is one of the most successful coaches certainly in the NBA. And he is finding that success through using this mindfulness and meditation. And just the thought of all those athletes meditating is quite profound. I wouldn't want to be the person trying to get everyone to meditate together. And here is another famous athlete from the Vail area, or resides in the Vail area. And here she is going through her run and visualizing what she's about to go do. Can you guys all see what's happening in that video there? Yep, sweet. So this is something that I wanted to reproduce for what I was doing. And I guess I didn't really state, you know, I am currently full-time coaching border cross with the Ski and Snowboard Club Vail. And so I had quite a few athletes, and I immediately was turned on to the meditation and mindfulness. The club actually brought in an expert, one of my first days coaching there. And he had worked with some elite athletes, the U.S. women's soccer team for one. And this is something that the club wanted us to kind of push with our athletes and for ourselves as well. But, you know, they wanted us to kind of push this mindfulness and use it as a tool. And this expert came in, and, you know, he did some meditation stuff and basically explained kind of, you know, what it could do for us. But he had us do this one exercise, and I'm going to have you guys all kind of follow along here and give this a try. He had us close our eyes and for 20 seconds count how many things we thought of while we had our eyes closed in that 20-second span. So for the next 20 seconds, I'll time it. Count on your hands how many things you think of. Go. So I know that for me, I thought of quite a few things, and, you know, that's just my mind wandering, and that's very normal for anyone, really. But imagine that you needed to be able to focus for a longer period of time, and just say, for example, 60 seconds, and just focus on one thing. And for some of you who meditate, this is not going to be hard for you as you are practicing. And that is a hard task, especially for teenagers who I coach. And it's like Phil Jackson said, you have to practice this. You're not going to just show up to a championship game or a playoff game and be able to kind of use mindfulness at will. It's something you have to practice so that you can be able to reset and to have that sort of singular focus and the ability to be present. And, you know, with a lot of the things that I do, I travel with a lot of tools. Here's a picture of my tools on one of my recent trips. But the best tool that I found over the last season or two was a very free and accessible app, and the Insight Timer. You can get it for pretty much any smartphone. And what I did is I used it with my athletes. And what I liked about it was that there was a really easy to use beginner kind of explanation and process, a process that also had like accountability, where if you had like a streak, you could see how many days in a row that you had used it. And so I started using it with my team, and, you know, we all had different needs. We found different, I found different challenges with some of these kids. But for one kid in particular, the one that is in this photo next to me, he was an interesting person to be around. And say if I was in, like a car ride with this individual, we could talk about hundreds of different things, and his brain would jump all over the place. Whatever came to him, he would just begin speaking about. And this was, also obvious in his snowboarding. He could forget what he was doing while snowboarding. He could, forget how to do simple things during, a race event. So he became kind of a catalyst for, really taking the mindful practice and sports psychology, for me to do research about it and to really try different things in a trial and error way. And this really became sort of a team thing. Everyone kind of got involved, and we started small. Let's see if I can move this. Yeah. Just the simple meditation practices, setting goals. But then, I found that he was sort of a kinesthetic learning. He had kinesthetic preferences for learning. And so what I did was I started to try and work with him in a way that we could associate feelings with everything that we did. It was different for some of the others, but we sort of all followed along. And especially when we were traveling, we would start to do a visualization where, we had already kind of got grounded and centered, and we would talk about things that felt amazing. And so, for example, we would talk about, standing on the top of the podium. How great does standing on the top of the podium feel? It feels great. You're looking out there, you see your coach, your parents, maybe that girl that you're interested in, and, it feels so good. And then we would take that feeling and say, that's feeling number one. That's the number one feeling. And that's the goal. And we want to try and apply that to other things, that same feeling. So for example, we would go to the rest of our day and say, all right, now, we're going to go through this visualization, close your eyes, and we're going to start with the beginning of our day. You wake up, you're brushing your teeth, feels great. You're going to get dressed, you're going to get to the van, feels great. You see all your teammates, everybody's happy. And now we get to the mountain, we get to the top of the chair, and it feels great. We get to the top, we're starting to do practice, and we would go through the specific movements of the race and the course and the things that we were going to need to perform and execute, and the specific, body positions and board performances that we were going to need to execute. And each one, associating that great feeling. And this is something that worked well with this young man who had the extreme ADHD. But there's science behind it. And here in my research, I found this piece that really jumped out to me. And I think this is a profound statement. In that research with the swimmers, and in this case, the long track speed skaters, that you can strengthen muscle memory through a vividly imagined event or visualization. So when you look at Michaela Schifrin closing her eyes and going through her run, she's actually strengthening her muscle memory as she does that. And you don't visualize a crappy run. You imagine the best, most perfect run imaginable. And as she's doing that, she's strengthening her muscle memory. So this is really the premise for what we're doing here. And we had some success. And this young man was able to have overall improve, a very good trajectory. He was able to win at nationals and had a very good first year in the NORAM Cup. And, specifically all we did was we gave him a start gate routine that he did each time, which basically replaced his nervous tendencies, and he practiced visualization all the time. So much that sometimes people would come up to me and say, "What's wrong with Logan?" And, I would say nothing. There's nothing wrong with him. He is in the zone right now, and you should wait to hang out with him later. And so that we were able to achieve focus with him. And, for different athletes, it was very different. We had, I had one girl who loved her dog so much that I would sort of say, at the top of the race, listen, I need you to get to the bottom first. Your dog's down there. He's in danger. There's a known dog napper down there. And I think if you don't get down there first, your dog is in danger. You need to get down there first so you can save your dog. And I'll tell you what, she got down there first. And so each one, there was different things that I did. And this young man, we sort of, in the photos here, we sort of played with audio cues and go phrases. And this is something that some of the other sports that I was researching used. And with this young man, he kind of, he had trouble getting in the zone. He wasn't able to get into the zone until like later in the day. And if he was able to make it to quarterfinals and things like that, he would be fine. He would be in the zone, but he couldn't get there for some time during the day. And so what I did with him was we sort of, we played with like alarms on my phone where in practice, with lifting weights and in other areas of our training, I would play a certain tone. And this started all the way in the beginning in like September. So by the time we got into race season in January, a couple months of doing this, and the tone would play. I would play it when he first got into the start gate area, and he would get into that zone. And you could physically see him get aggressive. This helped him kind of get to that into the zone sooner in the day. And we did, we were very successful, I think, because of this tactic that I used. And we kind of came up with it together. So yeah, it's different for everyone. And just like when we're teaching and we use multiple intelligences or learning preferences and we're trying to match them up with teaching styles, it's the same concept here. So what does this mean for instruction? Most everybody here is teaching. And, for me, when I think of my mindful practices, what it helps me to do is be present. And, when you're with children, especially, which is the majority of my teaching, you have to be perceptive. And a lot of times, it comes down to that fear factor. I need to be present in order to sense when someone's, fearful. And a lot of the times what I'll do is I'll just address it. I'll say, I'll joke around with them and say like, maybe we're going to, if we have time, maybe we'll start, backflips or, we'll go to the half pipe and with a beginner, that's, a crazy thought. And maybe they'll be visibly fearful, just from the mention of like expert level snowboarding. And when I'm able to sense that, I'll just address it and say, listen, this is a slam free lesson. And just addressing it a lot of times kind of like sets them at ease and gives them the ability to kind of relax and have fun. I don't think that it's specific to, saying a slam free lesson or telling them you're going to go hand in hand with them or whatever that may mean. I just think addressing it is the most helpful aspect. And I also love to use video MA. In coaching, I use it every day, all day. My phones are filled with video. And really what I found is when you show someone a video of their snowboarding, they're able to see maybe what they look like, and in their mind, it isn't even remotely close to what they thought they looked like. So that's, a visualization or a visual aid. But I'll also, sometimes take the time, especially with like maybe a private client, and say, okay, here's a video of you. Here's what you look like, but close your eyes for a second and push your shoulder into this position and bend your knee in this way. And they'll get that sort of using visualization to show them what they're supposed to do has been very helpful to the people that I've used that with. So I would say that it can be used in instruction as well. And then, if you get to the level and you're taking exams, I would definitely say, this is a tool that I think can help everyone. For me, when I took my Cert 3 the first time, I wasn't prepared at all. And, something like switch moguls wasn't something that I did. Wasn't something that I was really interested in doing ever. But the second time around, when I took my exam the second time, I had done it quite a few times, but I had also been able to kind of watch videos of other people do it, and I thought about it a lot. I didn't realize that I was, sort of visualizing it, but I was. And I would say that, those of us that are going out for an exam, use this tool. I really believe that this is something that can help people. When I talk about using your phone as a supervisor, and some of you guys I think are supervisors too, it's really not good to be seen using your phone when you're working. People will assume the worst. So, you gotta be, there's a balance there. You gotta be able to know when to use it. And really that's my presentation. I would like to open up with questions and maybe get a discussion going here. What does anyone have, like something that they like to share as it relates to mindfulness and how it's helped them? I guess I should do this. There we go.
Yeah, I can share personally, Phil, about mindfulness a little bit, how it helped me. I compete a little bit in the Freeride Qualifier Tour series, doing the 4-star events around North America. And I've used that kind of like start gate routine to help me get rid of those like jitters before I drop into my run and stuff like that. That's really helped out. And it also increases performance in like profound ways, because I've always thought that I've had the best run that I've done the run immediately after the comp, where all the jitters are out of my body and I'm warmed up and everything's good to go. But just that visualization kind of gets the muscles warm without you having to do anything, which is pretty sweet. I like that.
Yeah. It's worked for me as well. And like I say, I recommend it. If you're new to meditation, and, you know, it may be something that is, you know, there are stereotypes, and I think that there's also like a spiritual side to it, that anytime you talk about religion, politics, spirituality, you know, it's one of those, like, you're not supposed to talk about that with other people. It's like something that you keep private. But I would say that, yeah, if you can get past those stereotypes, it is something that can be very helpful.
Someone I would love to hear from in this group here is Chris Hargrave, because I know he has a lot of experience coaching some high-level athletes, and what your experience is around mindfulness, or have you, I'm sure you have, you know, coached with your athletes, but what has been your experience?
Well, they all have triggers, and it's unique to each one of them, as Phil was kind of describing. I mean, Shaun White was beast mode. Nobody knows this, but Shaun will start yelling emphatically this crazy beast mode thing. Beast mode, beast mode. It's pretty interesting. And you know, you just kind of have to support it. And if first time you hear it, you know, if you're not used to working with an athlete like that, it's kind of like, there's a part of me that, like, I'm smiling now. I remember thinking, like, almost like, whoa, what's this? And then, but you start to understand that everybody has their own trigger. You know, Toby Miller is all music and silence. You know, Chaz Guldaman would bite my arm. I mean, there were all these different things that they did that would trigger them. And, you know, for me, it's always, I think back to even when I was fighting, because I used to fight competitively internationally, and I mean, don't fear me. I got beat up a lot, so no big deal. But, you know, my coach at the time, my instructor, you know, he would always walk through a sort of a grounding focus piece that was, he'd start with, you know, where are you? What color is the room? What color is the floor? And he'd start drawing me into the present through a whole series of questions, which I always was fascinated by, because it worked. It would bring me right into the moment, you know. And, you know, something Phil was talking about with, you know, he was talking about visualization. And it's interesting because I tell my athletes all the time that visualizing things is not just, it's just not just the act of seeing it. You know, it's not just watching the videotape in your head. It's literally feeling it as you see it, you know. So in real time, you actually have to experience it. So, you know, earlier he showed a video of Michaela Schifrin, and she was going through sort of some weird contorting movements. But I love it when athletes actually go through motion and they're feeling as they're seeing and thinking all together, because those triggers are so important. It makes what they're about to experience very real. It makes what they're experiencing in their mind very real. It's the closest you can get to a fully immersive, you know, three-dimensional experience in your mind. And it's critical that they do that, because it's as powerful in some cases as the real thing. So I would say that, you know, I think Phil's right on the money. I thought one of the stories he shared was really funny, was the story about the girl and her dog being in danger. I think that's pretty clever. You know, it's funny because every athlete that I've ever worked with, doesn't matter what age, they're all very different. But the one thing that you learn as a coach pretty quick is that most of them, for example, in the start box, don't want to hear what they have to do in that moment. They don't want to talk about their run. They don't want to talk about, you know, some skill that they've been working on. They don't want to talk about, you know, what's got to be done right there. Most of them want to laugh. They want to get pumped up. You know, I had one athlete, a border cross athlete, and one day we were laughing because there was a team came out from the East. It was at Nationals, and a team came out from the East, and they were all doing push-ups and like getting buff. And so we started making fun of him, and don't take this the wrong way, but he's like, what are they doing? I'm like, they're just getting buff, dude. He's like, oh, get buff. And so before every run, he'd be like, hey, Chris, I'm going to get buff. I'm like, get buff, dude. And we just go back and forth. Let's get buff. And, you know, it's like, it really is. You do have to be perceptive. You do have to think on your feet. It's probably one of my favorite parts of coaching is recognizing the emotional triggers that are brought on by fear. And I think there's probably nothing more important than this aspect of working with athletes, is this emotional and mental focus. So really interesting stuff, Phil. Great job.
Thank you.
I know KB had a question, and then Tony after KB.
Let it rip, KB. I don't see KB. Oh, there he is. Well, it looks like Tony's ready. What's up, Tony?
I'll give KB a second to think about it. I got two kind of questions and or points, and I apologize. I kind of came in late. I've seen Easy's Stoke clinic, obviously live in action, but I would have loved to see that. And I apologize, Phil. I kind of missed some of yours, but the stuff that I did here was awesome. I like the idea of it and the way you use it. The question I have for you is that when you got into the discussion there at the end about using, your phone and doing video, we're actually looking in the Rocky Mountain division. We're updating some of our stuff, and we're looking at adding a piece at level 1, and then also as we go through to RMT about using our phones as tools. And obviously there's all kinds of debate on, does everybody have a phone, whose phone's going to die, and so on and so forth. Obviously we recognize it's a good tool. The one thing that came up is one of my friends mentioned that when we're using phones with athletes, and by the way, like, it's interesting when we get into these conversations, I find almost all of these tech talks, they're started with a group of instructors, like we're all snowboard instructors, but we always seem to go down the road of coaching, right? We always seem to go down that road of, like, when I'm dealing with my athletes. And I just think it's a fine line to watch. It's a very different thing being an instructor and dealing with an athlete and being a coach. As I've been on both sides of it, and obviously Hargraves and a lot of the folks on this call. Sticking with the instructor piece, one of the things that were brought up when we're discussing the use of phones is that sometimes you can use a phone and video somebody on a phone, and it can actually be detrimental to the learning experience. What I mean by that is that if somebody is like, if they think that they're a great rider and they think they did this amazing ollie and you video them and then they see it, all of a sudden they now have blocked out. They've now, even if you use it as a cheerleading moment, like, dude, look how sick this is. And they look at it and they're like, Tony, you're fucking crazy, bro. That is shit. Like, oh God, I thought I was better than that. And it could seriously, so you have to be very aware of who the people are. And when you're dealing with athletes, to Chris's point, you know a lot more about your athletes. You know those weird things that gets them going. You know how they peak perform and things like that, right? But when you're dealing with a student, I always tell people, like, if you're going to use phone, it's sweet, but make sure to do a few runs first, right? Get to know your student, get to know what they're into, get to know what looks good to them. Point some riders out on the hill as you're going up the chairlift and be like, hey, what do you think of that rider? And, you might look at them and be like, oh my God, full on gape, or like super loose, out of control. And that your student might be like, yeah, that guy is sick. So you can start to get an idea for their awareness of expectations in that regard. So that was the one point that I just wanted to make on the video. But I'd like to ask you on that. Have you had any of those situations where when you're coaching with athletes and you're using the video stuff, and it actually it starts to bring people's understanding or self-awareness down as a tool?
I mean, I've seen that, and I think the relationship piece is something that really is key to it all. And you're not going to just like go to a stranger. One of my pet peeves is when someone pulls out their phone and they're like, look at this, and they put it right in your face, and it's invasive, and I don't know where that phone's been. So you have to have like some sort of a baseline with someone. But I would say, like, instruction for me with a private lesson with someone I've been with before, maybe, but I'm going to be very careful when I pull that out. And I think the biggest thing I'm looking for is you want to give them that visual aid. And, if you're telling them to be getting to this position or that, and they're just not, well, maybe that visual will give them a better picture of what they need to be doing.
Great. Thanks for that. And I had another point, but I'll save it for later. So KB, go for it, bro.
KB. Still not here. Oh, I think he's on a phone, maybe. He's phoned in.
Hey.
Well, I'm ready if KB's not.
Yeah, go for it.
I was,
and then Chandler, you'll be after him. Okay.
I was going to add on to what Tony kind of said, and for years, one of the biggest selling points to summer camps at Mount Hood back in the 90s and 2000s was there were lots of video cameras. So we did video analysis for everybody every day, and we got to go through that experience multiple times over that Tony described, where people are just embarrassed by what they see. And what you learn really fast is that video analysis should never just be random. It should be very intentional. So if you're going to take a video of a student, you should be focused on something very specific that you want to see and that you want them to see. And then when you walk back through it, you should go right to that specific intention. So that is to say that, hey, I took a shot of you doing this thing, and I want you to notice exactly how you're standing on your board in this one moment. And then you show them that, you draw their attention to that. You don't allow their attention to go to the big picture of how good or bad they are, because that's where everybody wants to go. And so I've watched for years and years and years coaches use video analysis in that very way, where it's just they play the video in front of a whole group of kids, for example, and it's like, everybody come watch, and then you're watching, it's like everybody laughs at the awkwardness or the fail or the whatever, and the person who's at the center of attention there is sometimes very, very traumatically impacted by it. So it's something that has to be done with intent. And video review is still very prevalent. It's still something that most coaches do all the time. I tend to memorize everything that I see, and I've tried to get really good at explaining and clarifying through description and bringing people back to that moment in their mind as much as possible. Then I use video to highlight that and to support it very little, but as needed, as what I should say. And I think Tony was spot on, though. It's so easy to push somebody into a place where they mentally, emotionally will no longer function, and especially on the instructor side of things. Back to what Tony's saying, because I live in both worlds full time. I work with students and I work with athletes all year long. And what I'll say is that when you take a beginner who's not used to seeing themselves in that environment, you have to be very, very careful about how you do it. I mean, so much as to say that, if you have a first timer and you want to actually take a photo or get a video of them, you really should do something that celebrates, their successes in that moment, and be careful about using it for raw analysis. That's what I wanted to say.
Nice.
Sweet. All right. KB, I know, sorry, Chandler, you keep getting pushed further back. But KB,
hear me?
Chandler. Yo.
Awesome. Hey, Phil, great job, man. I think this is a great topic and a way that we can improve not only ourselves, but our athletes and guests when we're instructing. You hit on something earlier about resetting. And I was wondering if you, at any point, have you gotten to the point where you purposefully interrupt the meditation to see if they can get back on track? The reason I asked that is because when I was playing ball and we worked with some sports psychologists, we got to a point mentally where we called it sudden change. We're like, oh my God, the defense just got a great 3 and out and the quarterback throws a pick. Can you go from being in a high moment and that relaxed state of not caring because you're celebrating and you just made a great play, and all of a sudden interception happens and you have to be right back on point, right? How quickly can you get your mind back to that state of high performance? And so I was wondering if you guys have experienced that or explored that with your athletes.
I can say, and maybe Chris can talk about this as well. I can't say that I have been at that point. It's very interesting. And one of the things I wanted to ask you too is, what kind of level of mental preparation did you all do playing, professional sports? Was it like a team organized thing, or did you do it on your own?
So early on, it was kind of on my own because I was into yoga and a lot of things well before it became popular. And so as I moved up from Cleveland to Seattle, the strength coach believed in a lot of the stuff, and we got to talking about some of the things I was already doing, and he started to form it to fit more of a team concept. And so then we started doing yoga, we started meditating, then we started like literally playing the whole game in your head.
Yeah.
And Chris hit on something that's very key, is not just going through the plays, but literally feeling your body make those movements, make those calls. And I'll be damned, I'll tell you a game that I just played. I literally called every play right the night before, and my body naturally reacted. I had 16 tackles, an interception, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery.
Wow.
And somebody was like, you just seem like you're out there and like knew where every play was going to be. I literally saw that game in my head the night before.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought.
Yeah, it's huge. And I'm sure we've been in exams together. I know you've seen me do it prior to doing the task.
Yeah.
I shut everything out, close my eyes, take that one deep breath, and I'm seeing myself perform the task right there in my head and feeling it. And then when I open my eyes, I just go. And that feeling has to carry me through.
What about you, Chris? Did you, KB's question about, you know, having that reset ability and maybe as a tactic for mental preparation, interrupting a meditation session so that you could kind of emulate, you know, a disturbance in what you may have already anticipated was going to happen?
So yes, emphatically yes. So I've worked very much with most of my top end athletes on their ability to recover from the unexpected, because it happens all the time. I mean, I'll give you a good time. I had one athlete who, if the wind would blow, because of their size, they would instantly go, well, it's the wind. I can't do it. I can't do this because of the wind. The wind's going to get me. And instantaneously. So we would train when there was no wind as if we were riding in the wind. And so we literally go into that and we work on that mental state and then try to pull back out of it. And so the strengthening the emotional capacity of an athlete is probably, it's very touchy-feely. So it's, as you were saying, there's like the spiritual thing that goes on with meditation and other aspects of the emotional side of developing riders in this case. But it's very, very important. So yes, the ability to blow their state and then recover is huge. A great example, because, you know, I'll go back to when I fought competitively. We constantly did that. In fact, my instructor intentionally set us up for failure. I mean, we'd be told to train to one thing, and then he'd have one student come in and come at you in a way that was completely out of left field. And the first few times I was so angry. I was fighting mad angry like that. I would get hit and I'd go, what the fuck, man? You're not doing what we're supposed to be doing right now. And I remember thinking as a competitor going, this is not right. They're not following the rules. And what it did is slowly it started to prepare me to manage anything that came really, really important. And for any athlete, or if you're working with an athlete, you have to do this. You got to get creative in how you do it. First, you got to know your athlete really well. Then you got to have the relationship where they trust you enough to allow you to do it. And then you can start to experience that. But absolutely, yes. I mean, and it goes without saying, Kevin knows way more about this than probably I do. He lived it, you know, in maybe one of the more difficult and aggressive sports on earth.
All right, thanks. Chandler, you're finally up, buddy. Chandler, you're still muted. Go.
Good. Well, I was thinking about the when you get so fixated on this style, like how do you adapt? How do you adapt with something when you're so like focused on one topic, and how do you go out of bounds there? How do you adapt to
that? You know, I could say, you know, so in snowboard racing, a lot of times there is like a bad, you know, crash or people get bumped into each other, and an athlete will come up and say, well, that person was the reason that, I didn't have a good run. And, my first reaction was like, this is snowboard racing. You're going to be bumped into, and you can't be fixated on this perfect run. You have to be ready. So guess what we're going to do in training for the next month? I'm going to send you into berms all together, and you're going to ride in traffic. And you have to be able to ride in traffic. You have to be used to riding in traffic, and we're going to visualize, you're going in on, a heel turn with maybe more speed than you're comfortable with. And you have to be able to realize there's someone right on you. Maybe their board is on top of you, and it will not be perfect. And so, yeah, to your point, being fixated on the perfect this or that, I think it really in any sport or anything you do, it's simple-minded.
I mean,
that it's going to go perfect.
I mean, I never said the word perfect. It's not about being perfect. It's just being able to adapt for your own riding and coaching for what you have to deal with, and people you have to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, it's open-mindedness, right?
Right. It's open, but it's just the students you have or the athletes you have, and or if you're training for something, it's how open can you be, but still be able to adapt to what you're looking at to go down, and what the weather and the terrain is that day. What's going on? How can we adapt this shit for what's in front of us?
I think this is KB. I think that's part of the reset training, and some of the things you can do in practice is called variability training. Here's where some people go wrong with the visualization. Phil hit on it several times. We visualize the perfect run. We visualize the perfect this. We visualize the perfect movements, when we know as humans it's not going to be perfect. And so what you do is you start to train and practice, as Phil mentioned. I'm going to put you guys all in a bunch in a berm, and there's going to be 20 of you in a 5-foot berm. You're going to touch someone.
Yeah.
And now I know how to respond and react, right? Because I've been put in a situation that's different. Variability training is going outside of training perfect, so that when you come back to perfect, it's even that much better, because now you have a real feel for what it should feel like.
Right. Well,
right?
What I'm
and they use it all the time
is
in golf. They'll make you hit one ball perfect, then they make you hit one off the toe, one off the hill. And then you come back and it's just so much easier to make contact with the ball. And so it becomes a feel thing after a while.
Yeah, one of the things that I meant to get to, and I think I skipped over it, was one of the goals of what I'm doing and what I think a lot of these programs are doing is you want to get into the flow state, where, like KB said, the variable training versus the block training or drill training. When you're in the flow state, anything that comes at you, you can kind of handle, and you're hyper focused on just that, anything that can come at you. And when you're in the flow state, you're invincible. I maybe I interrupted you. Go ahead, Chandler.
No, you're good. I think other people are going on. I feel any objects coming your way, being able to adapt that and work together, really teamwork, and being able to continue down the path, and you're gonna hit some bumpy roads along that, and it's all gonna bind together, and that's really all that matters. So yeah, go on.
All right, Cody had something to ask.
Not necessarily something to ask, but I used to be a national swimmer as well as a snowboarder, and this is actually something that I kind of found really interesting, because I would do this a lot of the times before a lot of big meets, but I would make sure that I would actually pick and choose when I would get into this kind of zone that would put me in like a really good mental state and physical state to compete. Because through my swimming career, I would have anywhere from 40 to 50 meets within a year, and I would be swimming 3 to 6 events a meet. So it got to the point where I just kind of got numb to the idea of competing, where it's just like it was just any other thing, you know, like it was just I was so used to competing that like I just couldn't perform anymore. And so it actually got to the point where like I had to put myself into that mental state, and I would really perform if I really got into that like kind of flow state in my mind ahead of time. But if I did it too often, then I couldn't actually get back to that flow state. Like I would almost like have like a tank of that mental state that I could use. And if I used too much of it too frequently, it got to the point where like I couldn't compete anymore. I was wondering if anyone else maybe have found that with their athletes, to where like they might, you know, have that pre-race kind of routine, and after a while it just kind of wears off and it doesn't actually get them into that kind of mindset ready to race.
You know, one thing that I wanted to say kind of related to that, Cody, is that think of how many times you've taught a student on a perfect day, and then you've warned them about the bad day that's coming in the future. It's like you got perfect conditions to learn, and today's awesome, but tomorrow when it's icy and gnarly, you're going to be doing it very differently, right? So all that training to perform in just one environment doesn't really work in all environments, especially for newer students. And I think it's really important. But to your point, absolutely. I mean, when you're working with athletes that get into their competitive season, and it's a season, it's a cycle, right? And they get to that place, it becomes less of a big moment, you know, like the Eminem line, you got one chance, do not miss your chance to blow, that whole thing, right? It's like that starts to pass, and it just becomes the next opportunity and the next opportunity, and you're working at getting better at the next opportunity. And they definitely do start to develop some performance skill and confidence and momentum, which is really important.
Adria, I think, had the next point.
Yeah, so you guys can call me 80 if you remember. Yeah, you almost had it right on the chat there. I just wanted to add to what KB was saying, and kind of a conversation about training to vigilance is, with imagery, it's always good to visualize a perfect run or a perfect whatever we want that performance to be. But it's also really crucial and important that we train to the unexpected or the things going wrong as well, and how we would cope to that moment or adjust to that moment. So even though we're visualizing just to, you know, what we want the run performance to be, we also want to prepare for those moments where it's unexpected so we can recover quickly. So we're, you know, it's all about that mind-body connection. So the more we can do that as well, the more we're preparing for those moments that doesn't go exactly as planned. So I just wanted to add that in there so we can use that in imagery as well.
Yeah, I've got one more thing to add, just with the visualization part and the feeling of the action as you're doing your visualization. I've noticed personally, my personal experience, maybe somebody else can add if it's accurate for them, or, you know, their students or athletes they work with, that the only way it really works for me is if I've done that thing before, so I know exactly what it feels like, so that in my head I can then match that up to what I'm, you know, visually creating and seeing in my head. So it's maybe tricky to say visualization exactly, because for me that conjures up a lot of just it's all this picture playing in my head, whereas, like, you know, if I'm trying to get something new out of it, maybe visualization isn't really as useful for me. I don't know.
Well, I think we are all different, for one. So what works for you may not work. It's not a one size fits all. And, you know, when you're meditating and when you're getting to these mindful practices, again, that is very specific to the individual. So, you know, for me, I like to visualize things like, if I was going to go do something that I hadn't done in a little while, I would definitely want to visualize, even if it was just a chairlift ride, or, you know, a brief period of time. And I do think that, you know, with a visualization, similar to what Michaela Schifrin was doing, it would help me do it.
Cool. Lynn, you've got a point.
We talked about a bunch of different kinds of visualization. I counted maybe 3, maybe 4 of them. I think when you're in the moment though, performing, it's based on autonomous movement. Something goes wrong, your body needs to know what to do something right. Like we are doing a task, we fuck up a few turns. We need, based on however we do it, whether it's visualization or practice, I'm trying to remember what it's called, that Matty V talked about in his presentation, deliberate practice, or whatever we need to do to get back into the task. I don't think it's always about flow state. I know I'm going back a little bit to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. But I think, yes, visualization and flow state are connected, but I think we need to be able to perform without being in a flow state. Like flow state's awesome, but back to Cody's point, what if you're not in a flow state? Like, yeah, we should be able to get into it, but if we're not, we need to be autonomous enough through whatever method we use to be able to do that, whether we rely upon neuroplasticity or muscle memory or stuff our mirror neurons helped us with while we were training.
For me too, like Phil Jackson, you have to practice it. And so to get to a flow state or any state where you're going to perform something, if you don't have that practice there, you're not going to be able to kind of get to where you're trying to go. And I think it's going to be different for different people. For me, it's more of a daily thing, or, in some cases weekly, depending on my week. But, I would encourage you to pursue mindful practice and mental preparation if you want to achieve those things. Anybody else?
Sweet. All right. Well, if nobody else has got anything else on sports psychology, then thank you so much, Phil, for presenting.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Sweet slideshow, and it was nice to go pretty in depth on some of those. Yeah, it was nice to see kind of how a lot of these models we've talked about and a lot of these tech talks kind of converge. So that was sweet. Thanks also to Easy. I know he's out of here, but thanks for presenting earlier. And thank you guys, everybody, for being here. Thanks for making this what it is, because everybody's here. It is a thing. So yeah, I think that's all I've got to say on the matter. Yeah, I think next one's next week on Monday as well. Lynn, I don't know.